My mother and father came to Georgia from Lockheed, California when the Marietta Bell bomber plant was sold to Lockheed, and they helped to start Lockheed Marietta. My mother had worked at RKO Studios in California before she came to Lockheed, and my father was an engineer, so they were both pretty well traveled. And my mother said she thought the North Georgia mountains were the most beautiful, or was the most beautiful setting that she had ever seen, and they fell in love with this area. My father was one of the first cases of polio in the state of Georgia, and when he first got sick, he went to see Dr. George Cobble here in Ackworth, and Dr. Cobble had diagnosed him as having the flu. But my father didn't get better. In fact, his fever spiked and he was very sick. So Mother took him down to Henry Grady Hospital. They immediately put him in an iron lung, and they sent Mother home to take care of me because they knew she was a young mother with a young child. When my mother came home, the phone was ringing and my father had died while she was coming home. Because of the polio stigma, people were kind of afraid to be around us. And for a bit, people were very frightened. And some of the local people emerged to me as heroes. For example, Billy Pittner, who had been my babysitter, showed up with her suitcase and said, "Pat, I'm here to stay with Sylvia so you can work." And she basically took care of me and became like a sister to this day. Another person who I think was just wonderful was Miss Irma Henderson, because she offered to allow me to come to her kindergarten and let me interact with other children, which helped to alleviate the fears of a lot of the parents in the community. And that's something that I have realized that is special about Ackworth, because just as the special needs of my family's situation with my father passing away with polio were met, there are so many quiet, silent angels or heroes that step up to make sure that people keep their dignity and people are looked after. I was offered a position at Due West Elementary School by my former assistant principal, Mr. Charles Cox, who had worked with Bill Hamilton at Autry. And I taught at Due West, Pine Mountain Middle School, Fry Elementary, Due West Elementary, and Blackwell Elementary. And also the most wonderful position I held was at Ackworth Elementary under the leadership of Mr. Butch Price. I'm very proud of being at the very beginning of the renovation of downtown Ackworth. When my husband and I were first married, 1976, Ackworth was pretty much a ghost town. There might have been 3 or 4 businesses on Main Street, but the buildings were old and run down. And my husband and I had purchased a couple of the buildings on Main Street, and we were trying to renovate them ourselves. And a small group of the community got together and said, let's work together to see what we can do to make our town something that we can be proud of calling home, instead of being embarrassed when people would drive through. But I'm really proud of downtown Ackworth. When you drive into it, you feel like you are in a small town. You feel like this could be your home. And it didn't used to be that way. When you came into Ackworth, you couldn't come to downtown without passing a junkyard or torn down or burned down buildings. Well, now the people come to Ackworth just because of its beauty. I get irritated when you're driving down the interstate and you see all of these signs saying, "See historic and they name a town. Well, right now, every town seems to be historic, but Ackworth is historic. And I'm proud of that we have maintained the integrity and the values of what I consider to be our forefathers, the people that raised me and their grandparents and their parents and their grandparents. Those values have been passed down, and not only does that make Ackworth special, but it makes Georgia special and the South special. It makes people want to come back, and a lot of them don't leave.